Hi. Today I'm going to introduce the topic of boundaries. And boundaries is one of my favorite topics. I mean, it's a huge topic, honestly, and there's so much to cover with boundaries. But for today, in this video, I'm just going to stick with what are boundaries and why are they important. So short and simple, boundaries are what define us. So my boundaries are what indicate where I end and you begin. Short and simple. Most people think of boundaries as, these as barricades, right? As fortresses, maybe even, or walls or fences. Something that keeps everything that we don't want near us out, or that pushes something out. So something really strong is what most people think of when they think of boundaries. And sometimes that type of boundary is absolutely necessary, especially when there's something vulnerable in us that needs to be protected. But the truth is, when we have healthy protective boundaries, they really can be a lot more subtle and nuanced than that. So we'll get into that in some of the future videos. But the second type of boundary that I want to tell you about is the containment boundary. And most people are not very familiar with containment boundaries. But containment boundaries are what protect you from my toxic energies or negative emotions or unhealthy behaviors, right? Inappropriate behaviors. If I have good containment boundaries, then I know how to not put my stuff on you or someone else. So containment boundaries actually are the most important type of boundaries, because if more people understood and knew how to implement and exercise effective containment boundaries, there'd be a lot less need in the world for really strong protective boundaries. So even though people don't talk about containment boundaries very much, they are probably the single most important type of boundary. So the other thing I wanted to touch on today is that a lot of people have guilt when they think about putting up or expressing boundaries. And this is typically because we're afraid of hurting someone else's feelings. But here's the thing to remember. Boundaries are not something that we do to someone else or that we put on someone else, right? Boundaries are things that we set. They're things that we communicate that define who we are, okay? They're not just for others, right? We're not making that, we're not defining who we are so much for others. We do it for others, but really, just as much, we're defining who we are for ourselves. This is an important process for us to stay in tune with who we are. So there's no reason to feel guilt about it. It's just about expressing who we are, right? And the interesting thing is, when we give ourselves permission to set boundaries and to express who we are and what we want and what we need, we actually give other people permission to do the same. So it's really a beautiful thing. It's not something we should feel guilty about. It's a gift that we're giving to others, believe it or not. And especially if we can learn to do it at the beginning of a relationship. So when we set clear boundaries and limits at the beginning of a relationship, we hopefully never have to get to that place where we have to set really firm or aggressive feeling boundaries, because we've started out from the beginning expressing our needs and wants. And that puts other people at ease. We all want to know who and what we're dealing with. We all feel better in a relationship when we know who and what we're dealing with, because then things aren't unpredictable. We have a lot less insecurities. And so that's a gift when we can give it to other people, and it's a gift when they can give it to us, okay? So if we don't give limits and we don't set boundaries and we don't say, this behavior, this kind of language, this whatever is inappropriate for me or in relationship with me, and if others don't take time to set those same boundaries for us, this is where most, I would say 90% of relationship troubles begin, okay? Because both people, or one or the other, are failing to define and distinguish who we are. And that's critical to having healthy relationships. So, in a nutshell, boundaries are the basis of self-identification. And it's unfortunate that in human society, or at least these days, very few children are taught how to do this well at a young age. And so unfortunately, many of us enter adulthood without, actually being terribly afraid to express who we are and what we want in the world. and what we need from the relationships in our lives. And that's a very unfortunate thing. My wish really is that more human children could be raised the way that young horses are raised in a horse herd, because horses are fully committed and they spend really every day that they're together in a herd, every moment of every day, encouraging one another to express themselves, to define who they are, to say where their boundaries are, and they don't take it personally. This is a fully expected thing, and that's how horse herds are so harmonious. So, anyway, we'll talk more about what the lessons are that we can learn from horses as we move forward with this series. And the other thing that horses are also taught from a really young age is containment boundaries. They're taught how to contain their own energies and emotions, and how not to put those on the other horses in the herd, or not to express those when they're in very close proximity to other horses in a herd. They'll get told pretty quickly that that's not appropriate for the other horses. And again, this isn't something other than sort of the parent-child dynamics that usually we are taught in human society. So it behooves us to spend a lot of time as adults, if we have not been raised to understand the dynamics of boundaries. It really behooves us to spend some time working on this as adults. So I hope this introduction has been helpful to you, and I look forward to coming on for some future episodes to dig deeper into the nuances and details of better boundaries.